Is the inner saboteur holding you back in your life? Do you ever feel like you're a fraud and you know that you have the abilities, but you're questioning your abilities? You're doubting yourself, even though you might have achievements that you've done before. There's some sort of negative inner dialogue that starts to kind of hold you back, talk you out of starting something or talk you out of finishing something. And even if you do finish it, the quality of the experience is uncomfortable. So if this sounds like you, stay with me in this video because I'm going to be covering this topic, battling the imposter syndrome, or some people call it self-doubt. And I'm going to give you a couple of tips that you can apply today that will help you to break through this imposter syndrome. So let's start by identifying some of the common symptoms that people experience and see, can you identify with any of these? Like, do you ever feel like you're starting something or you're in the middle of something, you're just about to finish something, and this low feeling comes up? And it's followed by like a negative voice that says, why are you even doing this? This is not you. You're not even good at this. Like, why would anybody listen to you? You're a fraud. Or do you ever get that fear of being exposed as a fraud? Like, even though you know there's no evidence to support it, you still have that fear that someone's going to call you out and say that you're full of shit. Or perhaps you constantly downplay your accomplishments and think that others might be better at the job than you or more competent, you know? If any of these resonate with you, keep watching. And we're going to dive into the solution really quickly. We're not going to go too much into the detail. Everybody who has imposter syndrome knows what it's like. There's no point in me going into too much detail. And we're going to discuss a unique and reliable couple of tips that you may have heard of before, or you may have not heard of them before, but they're very good at helping you to overcome that imposter syndrome. And there's many ways, many complex ways that you can overcome imposter syndrome. But when you're trying to learn something like this in a video like this, it's best just to keep it simple. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to keep it simple, and we're going to do something simple and easy to remember. So think of this as kind of like a step towards learning to change how you're thinking and feeling. And we're breaking that habit, that cycle that you may be stuck in. So tip number one is a simple one, and it's overlooked sometimes, and it's changing the tone of the voice. Making that negative voice in your head sound squeaky. So if you hear a negative statement in your head saying you can't do something, I know it sounds silly, but that's the idea of this, is if you make that voice sound silly, you won't be able to take it seriously. And this is a simple and powerful, overlooked way of creating an intervention into your own thinking that works really, really well if you play around with it and remember to do it. Right? You'll never be able to take the voice seriously again, which means if you can't take it seriously when it's trying to talk you down or talk you out of something, you'll be able to get on with your life. So imagine changing the tone of the saboteur, and imagine it sounds like a small squeaky little mouse. It's trying to make you feel bad, or it's trying to say that you're not good enough, but you just hear this in a squeaky tone, in a squeaky voice. And whatever you said to yourself in a negative tone or a negative phrase, repeat exactly what you said to yourself, but just saying it this time in a negative, squeaky voice. Just give it a try, because you're going to be surprised at how just changing the tone in your head changes the meaning. Because if you talk to somebody else in a squeaky voice and you're trying to make them feel bad, they can't take you seriously. It just doesn't work. But if you talk to them in a condescending, negative tone, then they're more likely to believe that what you're saying is true, and it might offend them or hurt them or put them down. So just play around with it, because once you hear that squeaky voice, you can't unhear it. And it will make it very difficult to be able to take that self-saboteur seriously again. It's just impossible to take it seriously again, because you have a choice. Then you've got this ordinary voice, and then you've got this other one that you have a choice to play around with it and, you know, use it as an intervention. For the hell of it, just try it out and see what happens, and notice how different it feels if you do this. So the next tip, these can go hand in hand together. You can do them separately. Find out what works for you. There's lots of different tips that you can find all over the internet. Just finding something that you can go, you know what, Paul, actually, that one actually really works well for me, because I do so many videos and I hear different people saying that different techniques and different tips that I share with people work for them. You know, so different people have different ways of interpreting their world, and some of these techniques will resonate with you and some of them might not. But just try these out and see what happens. And the second tip is rephrasing this negative thoughts. And this is a very good, well-known technique. Sometimes it's called reframing, but to simplify it, we're going to call it rephrasing negative thoughts. If you listen to the tone of the negative voice, you'll notice that it's not very motivating. So you're changing the tone. When you hear that self-sabotaging voice in your head, rephrase those thoughts into their opposite. So what you're going to do is you're going to rephrase it in a positive way to yourself and in a more positive and encouraging tone. And say it with the same enthusiasm as if you were going to use the same statement on trying to motivate a child. Like you were going to motivate a child. What's the tone that you would use to motivate them? So you're reframing it in a positive way. So do the opposite of what the statement was. If you heard this statement in your head saying that you can't do this, you just change it to you can do this, but change the tone to a more positive and encouraging tone, as if you were talking to a child. And by changing the tone in your head and rephrasing this in a positive way in your mind will begin to process the new instructions. It can't not do it. Everything you say to yourself, your mind is processing in some way. And if you keep doing this simple shift in language and a simple shift in your tone will make a big difference in how you feel. And remember also, this video, if you hear a negative voice in your head saying you can't follow these steps, this is not going to work for you, nothing's going to work for you, just forget about this and just move on to the next video and keep scrolling. Imagine that voice that's telling you to do that. Imagine that when you hear it, make it a squeaky voice and try to take it seriously and notice what happens. If you want to move to step 2, you can. We'll call it the turnaround. It's the one we talked about. And it's saying the opposite of what you said in a positive and encouraging way. So you're going to rephrase it, the negative statement you hear in your head, turn it around, say it in the opposite way, and say it in a tone that's encouraging and empowering, as if you were to talk to a child. If you get good at this, you'll be way more productive. You'll get much more stuff done. And also you'll have a much better quality of life and experience along the way. If you found these tips helpful, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe for more content like this, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you the next time.